time to grab some booty. Ahoy, mateys! I be Jimmy Knight! Konnichiwa, mina. Oriwa Jimmy Knight. In 1987, Mr. Civilization himself, Sid Meier, before he became Mr. Civilization himself, Sid Meier, released a game for the Commodore 64 and later the Apple II and PC and a whole host of other systems as time went on, called Sid Meier's Pirates, an open-world adventure game which let you, the player, live the life of a pirate on the Spanish Main. The game we'll be looking at today is not that game. It is in fact the 2004 remake, which was originally released for Windows and as time went on, practically every system imaginable. Soredewa! Avast ye! Batten down the hatches, there'll be pirates ahead!
The game's opening cutscene shows your family celebrating, as they will soon be able to pay off their debt to the Marquis de Montalban. However, on the night the debt was due to be paid, the fleet of ships key to that repayment sink, and the Marquis himself comes a-knockin' and enslaves your family. You, however, don't like that idea very much, and decide to inform the Marquis of this by headbutting him in the stomach, which, surprisingly enough, doesn't work very well. So you go with probably the wiser option: run like hell. 10 years later, and all grown up, you enter a tavern looking for work on the high seas, and having chosen your name, your difficulty, your special skill, your starting era, and which nation you want to sail with, you promptly set out. No matter which nation you choose to sail with, however, your captain is as much of an asshole as the Marquis, and the crew mutinies, kicks the captain off the boat, and names you new captain. Now you can finally begin your search for your family, and exact your revenge on the Marquis de Montalban. Get all that? Good, throw it out the window. Because once you've gotten past the initial cutscene, the story doesn't just take a back seat. It dives in the trunk, locks it from the inside, and hides, giving you the ability to do as you please. The game has many cities and settlements controlled by one of 4 nations: Spain, France, England, and the Netherlands, with Spain controlling the majority of the land in the earliest starting era, and less so in later eras. The very first thing you'll do is enter a name for your character. You'll then choose a difficulty, which skill you want your character to specialize in, and which era you want to start in. Although if you pick the easiest difficulty setting, your starting era is automatically set to 1660. The game also randomly generates things such as buried treasure locations, how wealthy or fortified a town is, and where the most notorious pirates are, meaning each new playthrough will be unique. Once you're done setting up your character, you'll begin your adventure by speaking with the governor of a city belonging to whichever nationality you initially chose to sail with. He'll tell you which nations they're at war with, give you a letter of marque which authorizes you to plunder enemy ships, and hints that there just so happens to be an enemy ship nearby for you to attack, should you so choose. You'll then leave the governor's mansion and be presented with the town menu. When in the town, you can check your status, which tells you things such as how you fare when compared to other more famous pirates such as Blackbeard and Henry Morgan, how many family members you've rescued, how much buried treasure you found, etc. You can divide whatever plunder you've earned up to that point. After dividing the plunder, you can choose to continue playing the game with your current difficulty, increase the difficulty to the next highest level, or retire from pirating, ending the game. We've only just started, so we won't talk about that yet. You can visit the shipwright, who can repair and possibly upgrade any ships in your fleet, or trade with a merchant. Every town and settlement deals with trading the same things: food, luxuries, goods, spice, sugar, and cannon. The prices for each vary from town to town and from time to time. Lastly, you can visit the tavern, which itself has multiple options. In the tavern, you can hire more men to your crew. You can speak with a mysterious stranger in the back room who will usually offer to sell you something, either part of a map leading to a buried treasure or a special item which will improve some aspect of your gameplay. Lastly, you can speak with the barmaid, who will update you on the latest gossip, or the bartender, who will give you information regarding any quests you might be on. Occasionally, a fifth option will present itself, wherein a drunken captain is annoying the barmaid and you can challenge said captain to a sword fight. If you win, you'll be able to hire more crew, even if you've already hired from that tavern before challenging. So now we've spoken with the governor and done everything there is to do in town. It's time to start sailing, and the Spanish Main is yours to do with as you please, with no rules and no set goal, which is great. In theory. First, let's talk about how you actually control the game. On the PC, the game is controlled almost entirely via the 1 through 9 keys on the keypad, the functions of which change depending on what activity you're doing, which, surprisingly, works rather well considering the plethora of things to do in the game. But what is there to actually do, and what's your final goal? As far as things to do, there are a crapload, but for this review, we'll focus on the two things that I, at least, most associate with pirating: sailing and attacking other ships. Sailing is what you'll be spending most of the game doing, and ironically enough, is the least interesting part of the game. Your speed is determined, as you might expect, by which direction the wind is blowing and how fast, meaning sailing against the wind is considerably slower than sailing with it. Sometimes you'll see a storm cloud pass by. Sailing under it increases your speed for a short time no matter which direction the wind blows, but apart from that there's no way to make the time go by any faster. Meaning if your destination is all the way on the other side of the map and the wind is blowing against you the whole way, go grab some popcorn or something. This is going to be a long, boring trip, which is bound to affect your crew's morale, as without a steady stream of gold or distractions to keep them happy, they will steadily grow angrier over time and will eventually mutiny if nothing is done about it. This is assuming, of course, you don't find any ships along the way to attack. While on the sailing map, you can attack a ship by either pressing the 5 key when close enough to the ship, or just run straight into it. You'll then enter a combat area, where both ships move it closer to real time. When attacking, you'll need to make sure one of your sides is facing your opponent before firing your cannons. You start out with round shot, which is great for damaging a ship's hull. You can later gain chain shot and grape shot, each of which have shorter range but can damage sails and kill crew members respectively. You can either sink a ship outright, or only deal some damage to it then move closer to board it, at which point either the enemy crew will surrender, or you'll have to duel with the enemy captain. While dueling, you'll see a red and white bar at the bottom of the screen. This is meant to indicate advantage, and if the point where the red and white meets is closer to you, you'll execute moves more poorly, and vice versa, but I've rarely noticed any effect from it, at least on journeyman difficulty. On shipboard sword fights, you'll also note a count of your crew members and that of the enemies. If one side's crew members gets down to 1, that crew's leader automatically surrenders. Once you've defeated the enemy captain, you can choose to keep the ship if you have enough room in your fleet, while also bearing in mind different ships have different properties as far as maneuverability and how many crewmen they can hold, in addition to giving you more cargo space. Or you can sink the ship. Again, there are more things to do, like attacking towns and finding treasure, even some romance, but they all control the same, with a keypad, so they're not too terribly different. So, what is the actual goal of the game? You could choose to search for and rescue all of your family members, but you don't have to. You can sink the ships of your country's enemies, but you don't have to. You could sail through the main and attack every city of every nation, but you don't have to. You could avoid piracy altogether, just be a good businessman by buying one commodity low in one town and selling high in another for the whole game. But you don't have to. Are you starting to notice a pattern? Just about everything you can do in the game appears to be optional. If you retire at any point, you're simply presented with this screen, which essentially shows your final score, and that's it. There's no real end game, no plot point telling you what your goal is. Sure, there's your family being kidnapped, but that serves more as explanation for how you got into piracy in the first place, not a goal, because again, you could play a whole game without rescuing a single family member. So, after an extended play session, you'll likely find yourself wondering, what's the point? And that's something you should never have to ask yourself when playing a game. But what if we looked at it differently? What if we looked at pirates
not as a game to be played in one sitting or over the course of 2 to 3 days, but as a simulator. Something to come back to on occasion to pass the time for a couple hours. With no real story to speak of, and thus no rules, no goal, practically no time limit, there's no tension, and thus no need to worry about losing. I mean, even if you do sink your last ship, say, and get a game over, there's plenty of save slots in the game, so you can easily pick up right where you left off if you don't want to start a whole new adventure. That's why I consider Sid Meier's Pirates to be worth every cent.